Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into another juicy story.
Always.
So this one, you guys sent in a novel this time, and let me tell you, it's a real page turner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called Knock 'Em Out, and it's got that small town vibe, but with some serious secrets.
Ah, I love those.
I know, right? It makes you wonder what's really going on behind those closed doors, right?
Absolutely.
Like, do you really know your neighbors?
Right.
So anyway, one of the things that really jumped out at me was this stark contrast between, the haves and have-nots.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic setup for conflict.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's this invisible line dividing the town.
Yeah, creates a lot of tension.
Totally. And
Yeah.
it's almost like the town itself is a character,
Yeah.
like shaping the lives of everyone who lives there.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about our main characters, shall we? We've got Sloane, the librarian.
Seems very grounded.
Yeah, she's like the heart of Knock 'Em Out. And then we have Lucian, this wealthy, powerful figure who, well, he's kind of an enigma.
Intriguing.
Right.
Tell me more.
He's got this strange relationship with Knock 'Em Out.
How so?
He seems both drawn to it and repelled by it at the same time. Like he can't stay away, but he doesn't really want to be there either.
Oh, that's interesting. Maybe it's tied to his past somehow.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Okay.
And then you've got Sloane who longs for, the whole family dream, marriage, kids, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
But Lucian is like completely averse to commitment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like the idea of family just terrifies him.
Huh. Well, his aversion to family life could be connected to his past. It sounds like the novel hints at a pretty tough upbringing for him.
Oh yeah, totally.
So, listener, has anyone out there ever experienced something similar? I mean, do you think our past experiences, especially difficult ones, can really shape our desires even years later?
That's a great question.
Something to think about.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And speaking of the past, well, the novel drops this bombshell early on. Sloane and Lucian have a history.
Oh.
And it's not just like, oh, we went to high school together kind of history.
Right.
We're talking a major life-altering event that happened when they were just teenagers.
Wow. Okay. This is getting good.
Right. So the story jumps back in time, and we see Lucian as this troubled teen. He comes from a broken home. I mean, an abusive home.
That's rough.
Yeah. And he finds himself seeking refuge at Sloane's house.
Really?
Yeah. Her family, the Waltons, they're like the picture of stability and warmth.
Interesting. So you have this bad boy seeking solace in the good family's home.
Right. And he just craves what they have, normalcy, love, support.
That's heartbreaking. Makes you wonder what he went through.
It really does. And then things take a really dark turn.
What happens?
Well, Lucian's father gets violent.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And Sloane, in a moment of panic, she calls the police.
She did what?
Yeah, she breaks a promise she made to Lucian to keep his family's secrets hidden.
Wow. So his father gets arrested.
He does, and
You're-
ultimately ends up in prison.
That's huge.
It is. And it changes everything. I mean, imagine the betrayal Lucian must have felt.
Yeah, you're right. He confides in her, asks for her help, and she chooses her own safety over their friendship. Ouch.
It's a wound that cuts deep.
For sure. And explains maybe why he has such a hard time trusting people now, especially Sloane.
Totally. But it's not just Lucian who's affected.
Right.
Sloane carries a lot of guilt.
Of course. I mean, she was forced to make an impossible choice.
Right, between protecting herself and her family or staying loyal to her friend.
That's a heavy burden to carry.
It is.
And so this one event, this fracture in their relationship as teenagers, really becomes the foundation for their adult interactions.
It explains the animosity, the distance.
Right, but it also creates this kind of magnetic tension between them.
Totally. It's like they can't stay away from each other, even though they both know they should.
It's like a train wreck waiting to happen.
Exactly.
I can't wait to see what happens next.
Me neither. But, just when we think we've got these characters figured out, the novel throws us another curveball.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
We discover that Lucian, despite his coldness and seeming indifference, he's been secretly supporting Sloane and her family for years.
Wait, what?
He's been using his wealth to protect Sloane from afar? Like he funded her father's expensive cancer treatments, paid off their mortgage.
Wow. He was playing guardian angel this whole time, but why all the secrecy?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, is it guilt?
Maybe.
Love? Some need to control?
It could be all of those things.
Right.
It definitely adds another layer to his character, and also raises questions about class dynamics, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's using his wealth to influence Sloane's life, even if it's with good intentions.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. He's helping her, but he's also creating a power imbalance.
It's true. And of course, this secrecy backfires spectacularly.
No, I bet it does. How does Sloane react when she finds out?
Well, she's furious.
Understandably so.
She feels manipulated,
Yeah.
patronized. Like her independence has been undermined.
Totally.
And this confrontation, this clash between them,
Yeah.
well, it forces them to finally acknowledge all the hurt and resentment that's been simmering between them for years.
Ooh, that's gotta be intense.
It is. But it also opens the door to something more.
Is that right? Something more. Sounds like we're about to head into some uncharted territory. It's like they finally see each other, Like really see each other.
Exactly. And let's be real, the sexual tension between these two is off the charts.
Right. It's been simmering the whole time, and now it's just like,
Exploding.
yeah, it's like a dam breaking. And, it's not just about the physical attraction either.
I would
There's
say.
this element of like the forbidden, the dangerous.
Right. Like they both know they shouldn't, but they just can't help themselves.
Yeah. Exactly. And remember, we talked about the impact of past trauma. Well, both Sloane and Lucian are drawn to each other in this way that's both exciting and terrifying. It's like
Wow.
they're both trying to heal old wounds, but they're doing it in this really reckless way.
Cooking with fire, right?
Totally. And the novel doesn't shy away from that either. It shows the messy reality of, two people with baggage trying to connect.
It's not all champagne and roses.
Not at all. Their intimacy is intense, but it's also full of misunderstandings and emotional landmines. They're both bringing their past hurts into the bedroom, and it's not always pretty.
It's funny you say that because I was thinking the same thing. It's like the author is showing us that sex doesn't always solve emotional problems.
Right. In fact, it often makes things more complicated.
Totally. But, on top of all this internal drama, there's also this external threat looming over them.
Oh, yeah, the crime boss. I'd almost forgotten about him.
Right. He's got this vendetta against Lucian, and it adds a whole new dimension to the story.
For sure. Because suddenly Sloane and Lucian have to rely on each other to survive.
It's like they have to put their own issues aside and work together.
Right. It's almost like the external conflict mirrors their internal struggle. Like they're both fighting for their lives in a way.
That's such a good point. And in the middle of all this chaos, they start to see each other in a new light. Sloane, for the first time, really understands how deep Lucian's trauma runs.
She sees past the money and the power.
Exactly. She sees the scared little boy who needed her friendship.
And it softens her heart.
It does. She finally gets why he's so guarded.
And Lucian, he's forced to confront his own demons.
He realizes that vulnerability isn't weakness.
Right. It's like they both start to heal each other.
It's really beautiful. But let's not forget, this is a romance novel, right?
Oh, yeah. So where does the romance come in?
But just when you think things are calming down, the author throws in another twist.
Hit me with it. What happens?
The library burns down.
What? Sloane's library?
Yep. And it's no accident. It's the crime boss. He's trying to get to Lucian by targeting Sloane.
That's horrible. Talk about upping the stakes.
Right. And Sloane loses everything. Her home, her safe space.
She's forced to run.
Yeah. But in that moment of vulnerability, Lucian steps up.
How so?
He offers her protection, a place to hide.
He's finally being the man she needs him to be.
He is. And then he does something totally unexpected.
Don't leave me hanging. What does he do?
He proposes.
He proposes. Again.
Yeah. But this time it's different.
How so?
Before, it felt like he was trying to control her, but now it's like he's surrendering to her.
That's quite a shift.
It is. He's finally letting go of his fear and saying, I love you, be with me.
Wow. Okay, so what does Sloane say?
Well, she hesitates.
Of course. She's been hurt before.
Exactly. Plus, there's the whole crime boss situation. Can she really trust that Lucian can keep her safe?
That's a big question mark.
It is. And that, my friend, is where we leave things at the end of part 2.
Are you kidding me? Another cliffhanger.
I know. Talk about torture.
That cliffhanger is brutal. I need to know what happens next.
I know, right? Like, will she or won't she?
Exactly. But before we get to Sloane's answer, I think it's worth pointing out just how well the author weaves together all these different themes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's so much more than just a romance, right?
Right. It's about trauma, it's about class, family, and, of course, the power of love.
It really makes you think about those big questions.
And it challenges our assumptions about good and bad, rich and poor. I mean, Lucian, who we thought was the villain, well, he turns out to be much more complex than that.
Right. He's flawed, but he's also capable of great love and sacrifice.
Exactly. And Sloane, our heroine, well, she has to confront her own prejudices and insecurities.
It's a reminder that none of us are perfect. We all have our own baggage, our own secrets.
And speaking of secrets, we can't forget about the crime boss who's still out there.
Oh, yeah. He's like a ticking time bomb.
Right. And it's this external threat that forces Sloane to make a decision.
She realizes she can't keep running.
From Lucien.
From Lucien, from her feelings, from the danger.
So does she say yes?
She does.
She chooses love.
She does. She knows it won't be easy, but she believes their love is strong enough to overcome anything.
That's so romantic. But as you said, this isn't a fairy tale. They still have a lot to work through.
Right. I mean, the crime boss situation isn't resolved.
And there's the whole issue of their different worlds.
Exactly. They come from such different backgrounds. Can they really bridge that gap?
Well, that's the question the novel explores, right? Can love really conquer all?
And I think the answer is more nuanced than a simple yes or no.
Right. It's about compromise, understanding, and a willingness to meet each other halfway.
And ultimately, I think that's the message of the story. Love is messy and complicated, but it's also the most powerful force in the world.
Beautifully said. It can heal old wounds, it can break down barriers, and it can make us better versions of ourselves.
And that's what makes this novel so compelling. It reminds us that even in a world that often feels dark and divided, hope still exists.
And that love is always worth fighting for.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I have one final question for you, listener. If you were in Sloane's shoes, knowing everything you now know about Lucien, would you take that leap of faith? Would you trust him with your heart? It's something to think about.
It is. And maybe the answer isn't found in the pages of a novel, but within ourselves.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, happy reading.